There, welcome to this segment of Amazing Grace. My name is Ed Whitbread, and an old friend, Barry Davis, is back with us. Barry is a biblical archaeologist. We talked to him about a week ago, and we ran out of time, so we're going to go back to the place in Israel where he is rooting through the dirt and making all kind of discoveries and pick up from there. So, Barry, welcome back.
Thank you.
You were talking about your daughter and her influence on, how you got into all of this. So why don't you jump in there?
This is a little convoluted story, and most people always find this amazing. If you recall, I told you that I started taking biblical archaeology classes at Wesley Theological Seminary with my roommate, Carl Savage. Well, Carl and I remained very good friends for years and years after I had got out of seminary. He married me, and I knew of his kids being born. And then I went into the Army, and lo and behold, we kind of kept in touch, but not as frequently as we used to. Friends have a tendency to do that. But I knew that Carl was going on to get his PhD. He's an amazingly gifted man. And Carl started doing biblical archaeology well into the 90s, 80s and 90s. He started doing archaeology while I was serving in the military. And as he progressed, he became a doctor of theology and also biblical archaeology at Drew University in New Jersey, a Methodist university. And lo and behold, unknown to me, he would come into my life again. You remember I was saying about the sign pointing to Bethsaida, and no one would ever stop there. Well, I got home and I'm looking at biblical archaeology, and I see 3 sites that I want to go to. One of them was Ashkelon, down near the Gaza Strip. It was being done by Yale or Harvard University. I can't remember who. And another one was in Jerusalem itself by the University of North Carolina. And this other one I saw, and it had Bethsaida excavations from University of Omaha, or University of Nebraska at Omaha. And it had this, and I said, that's it. And it said, call for information. Well, I said, well, I don't know anybody, but I went, wait a minute, I do know somebody. I know somebody who's an archaeologist. I'll call my friend Carl Savage, because he had been on a PBS thing, the Secrets of the Lost Cave, or the Cave of Letters. And I called him up on the phone and I said, Carl, I'm just interested in going for a dig. And he says, well, you really should pick 3. And I said, well, I picked 3. And he goes, well, okay, just tell me which ones you picked. And he goes, and I told him. And he goes, oh, those are really interesting digs. Which one are you thinking about? And I says, oh, I don't want to go with Ashkelon because, they're Ivy School League kids, and I don't have my butler to wipe my brow, or dig deeper, Jeeves, and dig harder. I'm not sweating enough. Okay, so I don't think I want to go there with these entitled people. And I said, and I don't want to go to Jerusalem because it costs a lot. And I said, but I think I'd like to go to Bethsaida because I've been passing it so often, and I really wanted to see this place. And he said, well, why don't you call this phone number in Omaha and tell Christy, who's the secretary, that I've approved your application and I want you in my square. And I said, what do you mean you approved my application? You want me in the square? And he goes, you moron, I'm the assistant archaeologist on the site. So lo and behold, May 2012, okay, that year after getting back from the Holy Land, I'm 4 months later getting off a plane in the middle of the night in Israel, get on a bus. They take me from Tel Aviv to Gennesaret Kibbutz on the shore of Galilee, get out of the bus. There's waiting for me my old seminary roommate, now Dr. Carl Savage, the assistant thing. We saw each other. We gave each other a hug. The first time we'd seen each other in 20 years. And I am now his his dog's body. I go everywhere that he goes, and wherever Carl goes, my trowel follows. And so we've been inseparable now for 10 years. We go everywhere together.
Tell us about the significance of that dig. Not so much the dig itself, but the area you're digging in. What's its meaning in terms of the Bible? For those
Well, the tell, which is the name of the mound, anything is always a tell. And the tell sits about 1.25 miles. It all depends on how you read the map, from the Sea of Galilee.
Mm-hmm.
And that's because this is right along the bank of the Jordan River. The Jordan River runs along the side of the tell. This tell it had always been known that there was something there. It had been recorded in the 1700s, the 1800s, and then by the Palestinian Exploration Fund, which was a British-based biblical archaeology group in the early 1800s and 1900s. And there were always references to it. But in about 1980, a young Israeli by the name of Dr. Rami Arav, who was from Tiberias, which was about 25 miles from the site south along the Sea of Galilee, did some test digging on this site and came away with pottery from Byzantine. He came away with Arabic, came away with Greek, Roman, and older pottery. He kept finding older and older pieces of pottery and began the excavation. And what he found was not just one city, but he found, now I think there's something like, there's the Greek, there's the city that's referred to in the Bible as Julia, Bethsaida Julia, which is the Roman name given to this site. They found Greek ruins underneath it. They also found Geshurite ruins, the kingdom of Geshur there. And it goes all the way back to the Bronze Age.
When you say a city, how big is this tell? I mean, what's, in terms of geography, would it be a city block? Would it be a whole city?
Oh, it's bigger than a city block. Yeah. It kind of looks like your thumb is sticking this way into, it would be, the lake would have surrounded it with a lagoon. And so I would say you're looking at, and please don't take this as the end all be all, because I don't have it right at my fingertips. I would say it's 4 or 5 city blocks. It's quite big. It is quite big. It was also the site of a Syrian military base during the '67 war and before that. So it was actually fought over by the Syrians and the Israelis. So there was a battle fought on that site there too. So it's been significant.
Now, how many different groups might be working on that tell at the same time? You're there with Dr. Savage's group. Mm-hmm. Would there be another one from another university, or however they're sponsored?
Yes,
National Geographic have something out there that.
Yeah, what we had was different. It was a consortium of schools got together, and the consortium would change as schools came and fell out. We had schools that came from University of San Diego, and Dr. Jerome Hall, a leading underseas archaeologist, and who's now working on a book on what they call the 2,000-year-old boat, but most people know it as the Jesus boat. He's the leading expert in that. He would bring students from his archaeological classes. You would have people coming from the University of Nebraska in Omaha. You would have different colleges from Nebraska themselves coming. We had seminarians, Catholic seminarians coming. So you could have 4 or 5 different areas opened at any one time.
And that leads me to the next question, which is, who coordinates who goes where and for how long and how much of an area they're responsible for? There's got to be somebody that is making a decision for the entire 10 blocks or whatever it is.
Yes,
So
yes,
that you're not stepping on each other's toes and, you know,
right.
duplicating.
In this case, it was Dr. Rami. We called him Dr. Arab. We called him Rami. Dr. Arab would, in conjunction with Dr. Savage, Carl Savage, and another Israeli archaeologist who was there, they would decide what areas were the most promising, that they were really showing significant finds. And they would then take a look at how many volunteers had come. And they would divvy up the volunteers. So for example, when I went to Dr. Savage's area, because he had requested me to go there, I was trained by him and by a young archaeologist who, she's now an archaeologist in her own right in Israel. She taught me how to use the pick and the trowel, all the basic ABC things that you really needed to know of how you could feel that the earth was changing, the colors were changing so that you could see what you were looking at, so that you thought in different terms. And I learned off of her. Her name was Vanessa Workman, and she's a fantastic archaeologist in her own right. And I'm privileged to have had been taught by her and by Carl. So the next year I came back, I had a little bit more experience. So they always made sure that you had somebody that had experience that could teach the other people coming on. So now when I go with like Carl, I go with Carl and he already has a senior digger. Me, I can train these people, and I know now how I can relieve Carl, and I can record what we find. I can draw the overhead maps that's going on. I can do everything that Carl's doing, but Carl does it so much better than I do because I'm still learning. And so you have that level of experience that goes from novice all the way down. And you always have just enough people that know what they're doing to get into trouble, and the people who don't know what they're doing that you're trying to keep out of getting in trouble. So that's how you do it. It depends upon how many people you get.
Let me ask another dumb outsider's question. Is there ever a point in one of these areas, like this tell that you're talking about, where somebody says, okay, we're down to dirt, we're down to nothing, there's no other layer beyond this other than what God put there in the first place?
Right.
And you shut it down. Does that happen?
Yes, it does.
With a major dig?
Yes. What happens is, they usually have a time. They have I jokingly call it a sell by date, where you're going to shut down, and you never excavate an entire area. You always leave parts of it undisturbed. So because archaeology of itself is very invasive and destructive. In order to get to the stories, to tell the stories, you peel the layers away and you destroy what you're going through to find the story. So instead of just destroying everything, you keep pieces of it untouched, so that as the archaeological techniques and science progress, you can get better and better results with being less and less evasive, so that you have other pieces that have not been excavated, so that later on somebody may come back 20 years later, take a look at all of our records that we've kept. That's why you do all those meticulous records and photograph and map and do everything, and say, I don't agree, they missed this part right here. And they'll be able to interpret it differently. But we do get shut down. We did that just recently, Ed. We shut down the temple area that Dr. Savage and I had for 4 years have been digging in, because we came to at least a 2 or 3 inch thick coating of plaster that had one time coated the entire area. And so we had now gotten down to late Iron Age, getting ready to go into the Bronze Age. And we said, that's enough. We don't want to go any further, because this is where we want to stop.
It's kind of interesting you're talking about leaving that behind. We attended a lecture on all places, the north rim of the Grand Canyon a few years ago. They had an archaeologist in there,
Mhm.
and he was pushing the idea that nobody should ever really take anything out of an archaeological dig, that you
Mhm.
find it and leave it. And the gentleman
Mhm.
was very sincere, very serious.
Oh yeah,
Uh,
yeah, yeah,
my reaction, well, why bother?
yeah. That
What
that would
happens
be
to the Rosetta Stone if it, if
exactly.
you're in that area? But
Yeah.
it's kind of what you're saying there, and that you leave some areas untouched for
Mhm.
future education.
Right. Yeah. What's interesting is that with the technology that we have, when we're at a site, Ed, we have people that are specialists that will come in. And just to piggyback on your question about how do you get people to work in these sites, sometimes we'll have people like Dr. Harry Joel, who is from, I think, University of Wisconsin. He was our radar and LIDAR specialist, and would do these geophysical thing. We call them geophys, and they would take sonar equipment over areas to try to see the walls that were in certain areas of what their clusters in areas that we should dig before we even put the first spade in. So before you even do that, you have people like this man coming over, whom I worked with, um, doing scientific survey to try to see what it is that is under there. Are there structures there? Then I've actually field walked with Dr. Savage and Dr. Joel and another archaeologist. We would field walk an area, just go in lines across an area to see what pottery we would find. And if we'd find Greek, Roman pieces, if we'd find Ottoman pieces, did we have a big concentration in one area, or was it just a few scattered pieces here? Or was there anything? Was this a very sterile field? To give you an indication of what the age was in this area that you were going to work, even before you did you sank your first pick into the thing. You've walked it, you've mapped it, you've looked at geography, photographs, and then you've taken a look at the historical sources that are there. And that's why you go back to the beginning of the story, where Bethsaida had already been known from local lore as Julia Bethsaida, and it was known as Geshur. And it went through the biblical record, it went through historical record, and it went through oral tradition in this area. It was always referred to as Et Tel, the Tell. Okay.
Let me shift directions again, just to
Sure.
throw you off a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
You're working in a part of the world that is home to the Jewish tradition, to the Christian tradition, and to Islam.
Mm-hmm.
And it's not necessarily a fun place to be a lot of times.
No.
It
No.
kind of makes what's happening in our country right now look small on occasion.
Yeah. Yeah.
What impact does that have on the type of excavation that you're trying to do? You ever run into a situation where, it just political needs come into play? And
We've had digs where before I became there, Carl's told me of digs that they've had to cancel because of flare-ups.
Because people were shooting at each other. Okay.
Yeah, and the first intifada ended a dig. There was no dig. I was there a few years ago when they invaded Gaza, and as we were digging, I, being the old military guy, was watching the highway as troop carriers with tanks were going south. And a couple other military guys that were digging there, we all looked at each other and went, "This isn't good. You don't move that many tanks unless you're really planning to do something with that many tanks.
You're going to use them.
This is not just fun. You're going to do something." And lo and behold, they did have a incursion into Gaza, the little Gaza war that they had going on there. Well, it wasn't a little for the people involved in it, but that occurred there. And then another time I was there, there was they called the mini intifada, and they blocked off streets in Jerusalem when we were trying to get to our hotel, the American Colony Hotel. It's in East Jerusalem, the Arab part of Jerusalem. And I got there with no problems at all. And I have quite a few friends that are both Israeli and Palestinian. And to tell you the truth, I've never felt in danger when I was there.
We have grandkids in Los Angeles, and you will see where the mountains are falling down. Mudslides, and it's huge news. But when you're there, you realize that it's like a 2 or 3 block area of a small part of Los Angeles,
right?
And it's devastating to the people involved. But the city is not sliding into the sea, on the other hand.
No. What's interesting is the opportunities when you're in these digs that you've been talking about, the people that you get to meet, the variety of people that you run into. For example, we've had Jewish students work with us. We've had Muslim students work with us. We've had students from seminaries that would be Catholic seminaries, Lutheran seminaries, extremely evangelical seminaries. We've had people that have had no religious background whatsoever. Matter of fact, are agnostic. Come, and they come because they like to dig. They like to have history. It's really something to bring up an object that has maybe not seen the light of day for 2,000 years, or might not have been touched for 3,000 years. And that brings these people back. Plus, you have a lot of people that return. We call the Bethsaida family, who return. And they come from places as far away. I have a woman that I consider like my sister, Karine, who is from Paris. She comes all the time, especially when Carl and I are going to be there. She'll come because she works with us. I have friends like Ian Darnell from Australia, and Reverend Gregory Jenks from Australia, who come, New Zealand, and come, and Canada. We have them from all over.
Is language ever a problem? I mean,
no,
you're talking about all corners of the world here coming into.
Only the Australians. They really don't speak English all that much, but that's beside the point.
English is the common language for this.
Yes, and we also have, it's amazing. We have one man, our photographer, whom I love. He's a fantastic artist, Hanan Shafar, who's a polyglot. The man can speak, you name it, he can speak it. Okay, he's French, no problem. Portuguese, no problem. Okay, Spanish, he can do it. German, he can do it. English, he can do it. The man, even Russian and Polish, the guy can pull this off. Mm-hmm. So you have Carl, who is fluent in German and Greek, and Latin and Spanish. I can do German and a little bit of Spanish. You always have a way that you can converse, but English is the common language that you have.
Okay.
Yeah.
We are again.
Sorry.
I'm going to ask you one last thing. You ever get a chance to be just a plain old tourist when you're in that part of the world?
Yeah, you do.
When you're not crawling around on your hands and knees in 104 degrees and maybe sitting in a bar somewhere.
Yes. Well, at the end, almost every time you go on a tour or you go on a dig, if you go with an institution, they will have like the weekend. You get the weekend off. You only work 5 days because remember the Sabbath on Friday. So you always quit if you're in Israel by 12 o'clock so you can be washed and cleaned and have, so you can observe Shabbat, so you can observe that. So you're going to shut down the dig very quickly. So you have Saturday, and then they usually give you Sunday off as well. So you have the weekend. And most of these digs will arrange to have different professors that are there take groups of people on tours. So, for example, I got to see the fortress of Gamala, the Masada of the North, which was very close to Bethsaida. I've been to Capernaum. I have been to Caesarea numerous times. I've been to Hatzor, Megiddo. I've been to Hamat Tiberias. I've been to Nazareth. I've been to all these different places. You name it. We've gone to these places, and there's still places we have not seen yet that are unbelievable. That well, I've been to places that aren't even on the tourist map, because if you're in these sites and you're working, for example, I had the opportunity to go with Dr. Savage and Dr. Arav to see the digs at Hakuk, which Dr. Jody Magnus was excavating, that was sponsored by the National Geographic, these marvelous mosaics in this synagogue. And I got to see them, in the field before anybody else got to see them. I'm like, oh, this is so good. But you couldn't take any photographs because National Geographic had the rights, so you could only go, ooh, ah, and look at them. But that's something that is remarkable, that you get to see this stuff. And to have Dr. Jerome Hall take you into the boat museum and literally get you to within an inch of the boat and describe to you what you're seeing and how they preserve this thing is amazing. And you get that opportunity. Yeah, you get that opportunity.
Barry, it has been an immense amount of fun.
Thank you.
And we will do this again
Okay.
relatively soon, but we're up against the clock. So
Thank you
so much for your time.
You've got the chatty archaeologist. You've got the chatty archaeologist. Thank you, Ed.
Take care. Thanks much.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye-bye. How was that, Ed?
Okay, that was good. I'm a little surprised that Zoom let us go this long, because I don't.
Yeah, I am too. I am too. So
I have a feeling they look in, and if you're not screwing around, they just kind of let you go if the airways are available. I don't know that for sure. But I'm going to shut the recording off now.